In this final lesson on creating a web server with Node.js, we will just wrap things up. So there's one more piece that we need to implement here, and that is proper handling of a GET on the root URL, the root path. So what we want our application to do is to pick two random students from our array of students and return those with the response to our client. So let's do that. So in our app.js, one thing that we'll do is first we'll just create a function to give us a random pair. Now I like to create functions to do these sorts of things instead of just adding the code into our else if block below. So if we create a function, we'll call it random pair. And since our students array is declared globally, we don't have to pass a variable, but we may want to change that later if we modularize our application. So for now though, we'll just create a function random pair. And one way to do this is we can grab two random numbers. So let's say student1 index will get two random numbers that will be indexes to this array, and we can use math.random, and because math.random will return a floating point number, we'll use math.floor on math.random to get a number, and we'll multiply that number by the number of items in our students array so that we get a number between 0 and this number. So students.length. So this should return a random number between 0 and the length of our students array. And we'll grab a second random index, standard student2 index equals math floor math random times students length. Now that we have our two random indices, what we can do is we can just return another array with students of student1 index and students of student2 index, and that is going to return our random pair. So if any of that's unclear to you, then we could maybe talk about that in another lesson. We're just using math random to grab some random numbers. We could use something like Lodash here. Lodash is a package that provides some nice convenient utility methods, and one of them is returning a random number between 0 and some number, and we wouldn't have to do this bit of silly syntax here, but this isn't too bad. All right, so now that we have our function that returns a random pair of students from the array, and we can change our get implementation here so that instead of sending just the string matching students, what we can send back is maybe just a string with those two student names in it. So we could do that just using some string interpolation here. So what we'll return is maybe we'll call our random pair, and that is going to return an array. So what we really want, actually, let's do this. We'll say let match equal random pair. So that's going to be an array, and what we want to send back maybe is match of 0 and maybe just a space and match of 1. So what this is going to do is we are storing the array returned from random pair in this local variable called match, and then we're grabbing out the first student name and the second student name, space separating those, and sending them back as the body to our request. So let's just see if I did that properly. or made any mistakes. Let's restart our server. So that was just because I was typing and I hadn't completed things and it had forever couldn't cope. That happens. We saw that earlier. So now let's test. We'll test it from Postman first. And what we want to test here is a get on slash. That's what we've just changed. And I'm going to set none for the body because we're sending a get request. So if we send this get, oh, look at that. We got back Mark and Carl. If we send it again, we get back 2 different names. Beautiful. We can test this from our browser as well. So if we send that, look, we get back 2 random names instead of our string. Beautiful. So that's worked really well. So at this point, what we'd want to do is we'd want to make sure that all of our routes work the way we expect them to. If we do a request on invalid URLs, it works the way we expect. When we post data, it works the way we expect. We always get back the things that we expect to get. Now we could further extend this application by persisting our data. So right now, every time we restart our server, we lose the students that we've added. So if we do a get on students and we send that request, and here's our original list of students. So even though we had added students previously, and if we could do that now, let's just have a look so we can see. So if we send over Janelle, we send that and we get it back, it's updated. And if we send over Natalie and we send a post, it updates our list of students. And if we do a get on students, we can see that those names have been added. But what is going to happen if we restart our server? If we restart our server and we do a get, those names have disappeared. And that is because currently in our application, we're only storing these students in memory. While the application's running, the list gets updated and that gets stored. But as soon as we restart the application, we go back to our initial set of students. In order to address that, we would have to implement some data persistence. And of course, there are a number of ways to do that. And when we're developing applications, we typically persist data in a database. But a simple way to persist data is in a file. So in a future lesson, we'll have a look at how we could persist data for this application in a file. But that's all for now. I hope that all made sense. Feel free to look back through the videos. I will post some code up with this so that you can have a look and look back through the lesson notes and enjoy.